Patti LuPone plays Avis Amberg, a studio executive's wife who has a very interesting and ultimately empowering rise to the top in Ryan Murphy's new Netflix series, Hollywood. I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby. And Patti, I have to imagine that when Ryan first came to you with this, that how did he describe Avis to you when he came to you with it?
Well, he started by saying that she was he started out by saying she was a silent film actress who did not transition to the talkies because she was too ethnic. She married a studio mogul before he was a studio mogul. It was like a one-night stand. He got pregnant. They got married. He became a studio mogul, so she became a studio mogul's wife. So there was, innate power in that. And then when she inherits the studio, she is forced to, she is conflicted about making this particular movie. And she ends up making all the right decisions. She makes movies. What he said basically was she inherits the studio and she makes movies for gays, minorities, and women.
Which sounds like, of course, like just the perfect package. Was there something that you, when as you started to read the scripts, what did you latch onto with Avis?
I think, my career hasn't been the easiest in the world. And when I started out, when I was a kid and I'd go out to California for pilot season, I was, roundly rejected because of my looks, probably my personality as well, but more it was my looks. And I would come back to New York City and go, well, this is where I belong because I look as gritty as the streets. That's, of course, changed. I don't know when it changed, but when I was a kid, it was still the very pert, blonde, perky nose, non-threatening ethnic face, American girl, which is not me. So it was real depressing. Every time I get to LA, I would fall into this huge funk because I was rejected, constantly rejected. So there was that. There was the idea that a woman could have power that was empowering to me as an actress. And wearing those glorious costumes. Because on stage, more often than not, I am put in glorious costumes, from Evita to Anything Goes to Sunset Boulevard to Warpaint. I am dressed to the nines, just company dressed to the nines. But when I do television or film, I look like this old hag, and not in a Ryan Murphy show.
Well, and that's, you use that term, old hag, and Avis is so completely the opposite of that, not just in her bearing and her clothes and stuff, but she's also a sexually mature and active woman. I have to imagine that was also, enticing to play.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like when women get to a certain age, who thinks they don't have sexual desires? Who's that person? And who thinks that they can't perform well in bed? Who is that person? So the fact that Ryan gave me sex scenes, I went, finally, and give me more.
Yeah, well, I think one of the most interesting things about Avis's journey is that she does have these moments. She does have that moment where she starts to get a taste of the power, and then that power is suddenly almost taken away from her. And you have that great scene with Rob Reiner, and I think every scene between you and Rob is, you two had such great chemistry together. I have to imagine that scene where she tells him, I can't go back to what it was before, were those some of the most fun scenes to play?
Absolutely. All the scenes that I had with Rob, I was thrilled he was my husband. I've been such a fan of his and a fan of his politics. But he's so easy to work with, and he's great to work with. But that particular scene resonated for me because I think that's true of a lot of women that are working mothers that might feel in some way diminished. There seems to be a lot of talk about working mothers and not so much talk about working fathers, how perhaps we shouldn't do what we're doing or we can't possibly do it well. And that's, ridiculous, quite frankly.
Well, and what's also really interesting is those scenes with Samara Weaving as your daughter, where you two just hurl the most vicious insults at each other. And when I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago, she said that you two just kind of laughed constantly, and that made it easier to then be horrible to each other. Was that the atmosphere kind of on the set?
Yes, it's an incredibly copacetic company of actors. Everybody liked each other, even if we did or didn't work together. And in Samara's case, this is a very unique young woman. I remember I was in the makeup chair getting made up, and this ethereal blonde wafted in the room and came straight to me with this gigantic smile on her face and was incredibly present and said, "Hi, I'm Sam. I'm playing your daughter." And I looked at her and I went, well, I was moved that she even bothered to introduce herself to me. And then I thought, what a, poised woman she is at her age. And so I fell in love with her. And when we were sitting on this set, I would pump her to find out who this girl was. And she's got the most interesting background. And she's just this regular girl. And she's very funny. And it was wonderful to sit around and talk the day that it was Rob, Samara, and me, and just to be in the presence of those two was really, really delightful. So yeah, and she's enough of an actress to know I don't mean it.
Well, and what was so interesting, and I look at this cast, and you have really these kind of two ends of the spectrum. You have a lot of these younger actors. But then you also have these veterans, many of whom come from the theater. And so did having that group of theater actors, did that make it a happier set? Did that change the way you worked as opposed to other projects you've done?
You know what? I think there is a little bit of that. I do think that, it could have been because we were seasoned. There was less self-indulgence, do I want to say? We just get on with it because that's what we're used to doing on stage. And I don't know whether it influenced anybody, except that when the theater actors were working together, it was fast. We were prepared. We knew the intention of the scene. And we were fast in the delivery of it. And one of the moments that people talk about to me, because I'm primarily a stage actor, is the scene with Holland, Joe, and Harriet Harris as Eleanor Roosevelt. There are 4 theater actors acting in a scene together, which is, unheard of. Ryan is such a champion of actors. He loves them, he trusts them, and he puts together these amazing casts. And in this particular case, there were 4 veteran stage actors in a really crucial scene. And we had a ball. We had we didn't even think about it. It was like, okay, this is our scene. Let's just do it. And there was, it was, as I said earlier, it was efficient, not efficient. It was fast. And it was, there was just no stuff around it, no kind of distraction around it. This was what we were supposed to do. This is what we did.
I think one of my favorite scenes is a scene in I think it's the last episode with you and Jeremy Pope, who when he just tells you he's going to bring his boyfriend Rock Hudson to the Oscars, and it's such a quiet scene, but you two seem so connected in that moment. What was it like working with Jeremy, who's kind of this like up and coming actor who got 2 Tony nominations in 1 year?
Well, he's an extraordinary talent, and I had seen him on stage in Ain't Too Proud, and I went backstage because I was blown away by the talent on that stage, so I had to go back and pay my respects to this cast in Ain't Too Proud. And so I met Jeremy there, and he is just this really loving and forthcoming individual, and we connected, as we all did. But when you're working with one actor as opposed to the group, there has to be even more of a connection. He was powerful in that scene, and all I had to do was listen and be effective. And the interesting thing for me in that particular scene is we're used to this now. We're used to seeing homosexual love on display, and it was hard for me to go back to a time when this would have been completely taboo. Even people would have been arrested if they had shown that kind of affection in such a public place. And it's still the case in Russia. So it was hard for me to put myself in the position where I didn't know. Well, I mean, didn't know. Well, I guess didn't know the consequences, except I knew the consequences. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm trying to explain how to say this. Whereas right now, 3/4 of my friends are gay and in partnerships or in marriages. And you see this love connection open and complete. Back in 1946, when this was so not the case, so not acceptable. To realize the consequences was hard for me because, as I said, it's very present in society today. But he was so powerful in his delivery. I could cry right now. Actually, I had to prevent myself from crying in the scene because of the LGBTQ community and what they go through. And when I did Pose for Ryan, when I was on the set. Every day, a transgender woman was murdered. So there's a lot at stake for these people. And as I said, I started to cry. He was deeply, deeply moving in that scene. And it was hard for me to not cry and have to deliver the information that you will be ruined and rock will never work again. You realize that. It's a big
What I love, and that's one of the things that I think is so powerful about the series, is because it is what Ryan has termed faction. Imagine how far we might have come if we had had those role models earlier than we did. Mm-hmm. Maybe we would have, not gone through what we went through in the late 70s and the 80s with the AIDS crisis and things like that. This show seems to speak to a lot of those different levels. Why do you think this show is so necessary right now?
Well, I think it's escapism. I think it's, and within that, the subliminal effect of the stories, the minorities' stories is very powerful. Mm-hmm. It's Hollywood. Who doesn't dream of being a movie star in Hollywood? Who doesn't dream of being an actor? I mean, everybody thinks they're an actor. You know what I mean? It's true. And I think that it has a happy ending. And right now we're mired in confusion and despair. I know I am. I'm lost. I don't know what to do with my time. I don't know when I'm ever going to work again. There's financial considerations. And here's something that gives hope. And it's an inspiration. So, and again, escape. So what better combination? Hope, inspiration, and escape in this time we're in right now. Not that it wouldn't work if we weren't in this time, but I think it's especially potent now.
I asked the same question to Joe Mantello. You've had a long career and you've had a lot of experience with awards. And the last episode, of course, is kind of focused on that Oscars episode. And I was wondering, has your relationship or your view on awards changed over the course of your career?
what I always wished awards were a celebration of the nominees as the honorees, as opposed to a competition, because you can't compare parts. You can't compare set designs. You can't compare stories. And I wish that it was a celebration of talent as opposed to a competition. But I've always felt that. Having said that, if I'm nominated, of course I want to win. I don't think when people say it's an honor just to be nominated, yes, it is. But in the back of your mind, you want to bring the trophy home. And I have the same anxiety the night of or leading up to it. And it's especially tough for live theater because you're nominated at the beginning of April, I believe, or in the middle of April for the Tonys. You have the entire month of May where you have to perform at peak for the Tony voters. And then comes the night and it's like you're exhausted. And especially if you're in a musical, because you have to do a Thursday rehearsal, then you have to do, or a Saturday, I can't remember. And then on Sunday, the day most of us have matinees, you have to get up early, get into your uniform and, the slap, and do the camera rehearsal with the orchestra, and then go do a matinee, and then get out of costume and get into red carpet, get out of red carpet, get into costume, to do the number on the show, get out of the costume, get back into red carpet. It's exhausting. And then lose. You might win, but more often than not, you lose.
Oh God, that's so funny. I'm wondering, because I remember you had one of the, I think when you won your Tony for Gypsy, that was one of the funniest opening lines of an acceptance speech that I've ever heard, where you basically said, I'm paraphrasing, I'm happy to be a woman working who makes most of her life on the Broadway stage, and every 30 years or so pick up one of these. And so did you have that line in your back pocket in case you won?
Yes. Oh, yes. Also the one that my dresser gave me. Pat White was the one that gave me the dresser about, I got a shot every night. I don't know what's in it, but I'm giving the performance of my life. That was Pat White's line, my dresser. Who was the president of, the Wardrobe Union. But it was, people thought it was a shot, but I'm talking about a shot. And it was just a joke. We just wanted to make.
That was gonna be my very next question, because I've always wondered that if it was like a shot or an actual shot.
It was an actual shot, like you're getting like a B12 or some sort of illicit drug shot up your butt to give the performance of your life. We wanted to make it funny because we just did. It's such, first of all, it would have been, it's the same thing when I went with Evita. Evita was the most difficult role to come down the pike in a decade. Let's just say a decade. It was, I think, longer than that. And if you win, then it's an affirmation that you achieved something for the most difficult role. I thought if I lost, they don't realize how difficult this role is. This role is almost impossible to play. With Gypsy, with my history with Arthur Lawrence, and doing it at Ravinia, and then doing it at City Center, and then doing it on Broadway, and getting the bad review from Ben Brantley, and then getting the better review from Ben Brantley, it was sort of like, wait a minute. If I lost, I had won everything up to that point. So if I'd have lost, it would have been devastating. And so we wanted to make it amusing. And so, you have to have words prepared. I do, because I'm not a great speaker. I interpret. I'm an interpreter. I'm a storyteller. I need the words. I can't improvise the words like some people can. And so it was essential that I had something.
Well, that it's just one of my favorite Tony moments ever.
And that first line was written by Jeffrey Richmond, who has been a writer and an executive producer on Modern Family.
Modern Family.
Yeah, Jeffrey Richmond. And he's one of my oldest friends in the world. And he gave me that first line because we tried to figure out how long has it been since Evita to this, and it was 29 years.
And then, of course, you capped it off by yelling at the at the conductor, saying, "Don't play me off." It's been 29 years. Patti Patti, this has been absolutely such a pleasure. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews throughout the season. Patti LuPone, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. Take care. Stay safe. Stay healthy and somewhat sober.